Hello, fellow Sublime Text fanatics. ODAT Nerd here, back with another video on Sublime Text plugin development. And the subject of this video is actually a question that was asked in the comments section on one of the videos in the Simple Notes plugin package about executing commands in other packages, external dependencies, capturing command output, and detecting if other packages even exist. So let's see if I can talk a little bit about that in a way that makes sense. Now, once again, here we are in Sublime, and here's the question asked by Bud Labs in the comments section of the part 5 of the Simple Notes plugin, where he says that one thing he hasn't found properly documented anywhere is how to communicate with other packages, because he recently found out he can use the run command API method from within a package to execute a command from another package, but it would be great to do that in a safer way, like check if the package exists first. And maybe use the output of an external command or something. I think it's actually a separate question, but we're going to cover it here. And this borders into dependencies or shared libraries and stuff. And this is actually a pretty interesting question. One reason that you may not have found any documentation on how to communicate with other packages is there's not really a set mechanism for doing that. Um, the package ecosystem in Sublime is based very heavily on the concept of modules in and packages in Python. And so realistically speaking, a package in Sublime Text is just the same as a installed Python module that you might have. And as such, anything that you could do in Python to be able to detect if another module or library exists and is installed, you could do in a package. But on the whole, packages are more, they have plugin code. As we know, we like writing plugins. Plugins can implement regular code as well as commands. It's only the commands that Sublime will do something with inherently and directly, but packages also can contain many other kinds of resources as well, such as syntaxes, uh, color schemes, themes, snippets, completions, things like that. So they're really more a collection of resources than something that you necessarily need to communicate with. But that said, it probably is a good idea if you're writing a package that wants to leverage a command that exists in another package to either create your plugin in a way where it doesn't matter if that command exists or not, or perhaps put the onus on the user of the package to know that there's something special that might be going on there. So there's a couple of things we could do. Like one is if you wanted to use a command from another package and it's not necessarily vital to what it is you're doing. Like say there was a command in another package that would automatically justify the contents of a CSV file, and you were creating your own plugin to work with a CSV file, you might want to leverage that command from that other package to be able to justify the commas in a CSV file after your command does something. Now, strictly speaking, if that command didn't exist because that person didn't have that package installed, that's not the end of the world. You could just write in your documentation that, hey, if you have the advanced CSV package installed, then when you use this command to create a stub CSV file, I will automatically justify. Otherwise, you'll have to do that yourself. So you might want to install that package. But if you actually wanted to be able to know if that package exists first, that is possible. And I would say if you're going to create a plugin that absolutely requires that another package be installed to provide a command, this is probably something you should do. We should point out that the main system for installing packages automatically in Sublime Text is package control. And while package control does have the ability for you to flag your package as depending on what we would call a dependency, as you mentioned in your question, a dependency in this instance is a library of some sort. You can't make your package depend on another package. This is a long sought after feature. So you can't add your package to package control and have package control automatically know when I install package A, I should also install package B because it's required. The best you can do in that case is document in your package that you probably want that other one installed. If we were working on a plugin that definitely required that to be installed in order to work, then at the very least, we should probably verify if that package is installed and then either turn off functionality that's not going to work or pop up a dialog box to the user to say how to do something like that. So, how exactly could we figure out whether or not a package exists? Well, I think we'll know that if we go to Preferences, Browse Packages in the menu, we get this pop-up, which, again, no matter what platform you're running or where you've installed Sublime, this folder is the place where loose packages or unpacked packages, as we would call them, are stored. All of the folders in here are packages. Now, actually, technically speaking, if we see all of these ones like package setting, context, and Pyte, and Python Jinja 2 and Python Markdown, all these packages that have lowercase names, those are actually libraries that one of these other packages depends on, and package control has installed them automatically. This just verifies to you that, yes, libraries and packages in Sublime are pretty much, identical. You can get at this location from a plugin by using the API input endpoint sublime dot packages path. And we can see that's the location for me right now. That's a folder. So if you wrote Python code that scanned this folder for all of the top level folders that it contains, the names of each of those folders are names of packages that exist in this folder. That's part of the number of packages that are installed. If we go up one folder, there's another directory here called installed packages. And in here, we can see packages that have been installed as Sublime package files, which are just zip files with a different extension. And what's not visualized here is Sublime will actually load all Sublime packages that exist under installed packages, which includes if there are folders in here that themselves contain other Sublime package files, Sublime will load all of those as well. So if you want to know about all of the user installed packages, you also have to scan this folder for all of the files named Sublime of type Sublime-package, and then you could extract the names off of the front of them. And again, if we were to use sublime.installed packages path in a plugin, that will tell us that location. So part of your plugin, along with scanning the other folder, would also scan this folder and all subfolders of it to find the names of these files and do something with them as well. Now, for your purposes, that's pretty much all you have to do. If you actually wanted to know about all packages, well, we'll know that there is an HTML package that ships with Sublime, and we don't see it here. And if we go into this folder, we don't see it here either. Where's that? Packages that ship with Sublime are actually in a folder named packages that is inside the installation folder of Sublime Text itself. And you can actually get at that from a plugin by saying sublime.executable path. And we can see that this says that home o.nerd local sublime text 3 sublime text. This is actually pointing at literally it is the path to the binary of Sublime that is currently running. So you would need to throw the Sublime text part off and just worry about this. And if I was to copy that and open a terminal and cd into that path, like so, This is where my copy of Sublime Text 3 is installed. And here's a folder called Packages inside of it. And inside of here are a bunch of Sublime packages, and these are the ones that ship with Sublime. Now, these are off to the side to make sure you don't noodle with them, because anything you do to these files will get lost the next time you upgrade Sublime Text. Something else to note if you're going to do this is that it's possible for a package to appear as a folder here in this folder and simultaneously here. That means that you have installed the package and created an override on some of the contents of that package. And similarly, it's also possible for a package to be in that shipped executables location here and also here. That is very rare, but if that's the case, if there was, for example, an html.sublime package in this folder, then when Sublime starts, it knows that it shipped with an HTML package, but it also sees one here. So it would completely ignore the one in the shipped packages folder and use this one instead, which would allow you to completely replace a package ad hoc. And as these things go, along with that, there could also be a folder named HTML in this folder right here that also has files which are overriding your override, if you will. So it's important that you not only collect the names of these folders and also the names of package files, but that you merge them together, because the same name could appear more than once. And this is actually something that I do in my override audit package to be able to know about all packages and their contents. For your purposes, that is extreme overkill, because you probably only care whether or not a package exists, and there's a far easier way to do that the Sublime API gives us already, because in the Sublime module there is a method called find resources. And you can pass this specification to find all of the resources in all of the packages that are currently loaded by Sublime that match. So if I was to say star.sublime-syntax, for example, the result is a list of every Sublime syntax file in every package that's currently loaded and not ignored. Now, of course, there are many such packages, and some packages such as package dev, as we can see, have several potential syntaxes in them. But what if you just wanted to know, wanted to know about packages in general? You can just provide an empty string here. And now it's providing us a list of literally every resource in every package that Sublime knows about. And that's not just things like syntaxes and whatnot. This includes text files that Sublime would otherwise ignore. Anything that's the content of a package is in this list. And as we can see, this also includes items from the cache folder as well, not necessarily just the packages folder. And the great thing about this is, despite the fact that it's a very big list, it is easy to get at. It's just that one call. And it's leveraging the fact that Sublime already had to look up all of this information when it loaded the package. So there's no need for you to go look that stuff up for yourself. So as an example of that, if I was to create a new plugin, and I will make a module level function called plugin loaded, like so. If you were going to detect if a package was existed, you'd want to do that in a plugin loaded. If you are unfamiliar, if there's a module level function named plugin loaded, then every time Sublime loads your plugin file, once the entire file has been processed, it comes back and calls this. And that's important because the endpoints in the API, 99% of them are only available after all of the plugins have finished loading. And that includes the ones like find resources here, but also the ones that we just looked at for finding the executable path or finding the installed packages path or finding the packages path. None of that information is known until Sublime fully starts up. And you don't know for sure that Sublime has fully started up until plugin loaded is called. So it's always vital to do something like that here. Now, here's something that we could do. We could say that we want to create a list of packages that are known to Sublime right now. And as I said, there are many files down here that might have the same package in them. I have to scroll way back to get out of the cache. This is in packages user, this is in packages user. So there's going to be, as we scan through these files, a lot of similarly named things. So we're going to use a set here so that it'll automatically discard all of the duplicates for us. And then we can say for file name in sublime.find resources, and we're going to pass in just an empty resource to find everything as we did down there in the console. And now, as we can see, when we do this, we get cached content as well as package content. So we want to discount anything that's in the cache directory because that's not a package. So we could say if the file name starts with packages, then this is a file that is a resource that actually is contained in a file. And then what could we do? We could say file name dot split and split on the slash character, which would take this entire path and split it into parts based on the forward slash. And we know that all of the file names for packages start with packages slash the name of the package slash the name of the resource. So the first item in the list is the word packages. We don't care about that. The second item in the list is the name of the package. And if we were to do this and say packages dot add, that will add that to the set. So the first time you add a package, it's added to the set. The next time the set ignores it because it's already in the set. And we end up with a list of packages. And now we could investigate the packages as we want. For example, we could say if svn in packages, then print svn is installed, else print svn is not installed. And watch in the console as I save this. I'm just going to name it Untitled for our purposes here. We can see that it reloaded the plugin user.untitled and said svn is not installed, which is correct. I, in fact, do not have svn installed in this particular install of Sublime Text. But if I was to replace svn with html, which is a package that ships with Sublime and we know for sure that it contains, it says reloading plugin user.untitled, and now html is installed. Now, something to point out here is that I'm using a forward slash in this split on line 9 up here in the file. You might think that I'm doing that because I'm on Linux right now, but actually internally Sublime always uses the forward slash in path names. It's normalized so that it's always identical no matter what platform you're on. So this will actually work on macOS and Windows as well. Although it's worth noting that Windows and macOS, generally speaking, are not case sensitive when it comes to files. And if a person was to create a folder in their packages folder called, say, for example, default, but all uppercase, even though the real name of the package is default with only an uppercase D, Sublime will actually find the two of those as separate file names, and you can run into potentially bizarre case issues. And I leave it to you how far down the rabbit hole you want to go protecting people from themselves. It's not a good idea for anybody to do that because even though it works on Windows, it definitely won't work on Linux, and it may or may not work on macOS because it is possible for macOS to have a case-sensitive file system. So this answers the first part of your question there. How could you detect if a package exists? So if it was absolutely vital to you that you know that a package is definitely installed and before you do anything, this is the way that you could do something like that. And the other part of your question was how could you perhaps gather the output of an external command? Well, as we know, this is in fact possible because Sublime does it when you execute a build system, when you run a command. For example, I could say window.run command exec, and the command is going to take the arguments shell command, which is going to just be ls, and let's say it's in the working directory of my home directory, which is home slash, oh, I'm using ODAT nerd today, home ODAT nerd, like so. Now the exec command is built into Sublime, and it's what build systems use to execute their builds. And as soon as I run this, we see build output appears down here. We can see all of the folders in my home directory right now, and it says it finished in 0.0 seconds. We could actually capture, if we wanted, the output from that particular output. Now, again, there is an output called build panel called build results that shows that result. This is actually just a regular view. It's in a panel, but anything you can do with a view, you can also do with a panel by using the appropriate API endpoint to pull it out. So if you really wanted to, you could gather the output of the exec, you could use exec to execute an external command and then gather the output from this particular output buffer. An issue with that is that when you run exec, it runs the command that's executing in the background. So if instead of ls, this was sleep 60 to sleep for 60 seconds before returning, then this command starts that running in the background and immediately comes back. If you try to get the output of the command now, it's not going to be there because it's going to take 60 seconds for it to eventually finish. So you have to be able to detect when exec is actually finished executing. And something that knows about that actually is the exec command itself, right? So I'm going to do that over in here. I'm going to view package file, the exec default exec. There's a lot of stuff in here, but the high level takeaway is that the exec command, which is down here, implements process listener, which is up at the top, which has an on data and an on finished handler. And it behind the scenes, async process, this class right here, is what is responsible for performing the execution using subprocess.popen in different fashions depending on if you're Windows, Mac OS, or Linux, or whether you actually passed it as a shell command or if you're using an old style one. And it's capturing the output of standard out and standard error as seen here in this read file number, which is using os.read to capture the output and call on data, which the exec command uses to actually append the data to something, which eventually ends it up in that output panel at the bottom. And on finished, as we can see here, calls self.finish, and self.finish is what says that the command is finished executing. Self.finish knows when the command is done. So what we could do is something like this. We're going to go up back here into our little command here, and we are going to say from default.exec import exec command. Now here, default is the name of the package, and exec is the name of the file, and the name of the class we want is exec command. Okay, I'm going to remove this for the time being because we don't care about it anymore at this point. Now this brings us into this particular plugin a copy of the exec command. And now what we could do is something like class my exec command, and it's going to subclass exec command, right? And inside exec command, we can say def finish with self and proc, because that's what the one in the left was doing. Somewhere's in there. Oh, it's down here more, isn't it? This is the method that in the command gets called when this command is finished. So we're going to re-implement that here. And the first thing that we're going to do in our version of the command is say super finish proc, so that whatever the exec command would normally do is done. Now here we can do whatever we want, and we know that in our command it just finished executing something and the execution is complete. So what could we do here? We could do something like region is sublime dot region 0 self dot output view dot size, and we can see self dot output view here. Um, this is actually, we would have to, I guess, go up here a little more. This is the output panel that is being used for the exec command. The command stores its output in this thing, this property, so that it can access it. We are thus having the exact same property because we've subclassed, so we can directly ask that output panel, how big are you? And create a region that spans the whole thing. And then we can say that the command output is self.output view dot subster of region, which is something that we saw in previous videos. And then I can say print output. And I'm going to save that. And now if I come down here and change exec to my exec and do the exact same thing I did before, this is the output of the command, which is in the panel as we previously saw. And if I swap to the console, we can see the output is also here as well. So we have captured the output of the command. And of course, I just printed it to the console, but you could do whatever you wanted to do with it. This is one way to go about that. It's actually perhaps slightly more complicated than that, because this doesn't tell you whether or not the command actually finished properly. It might not have. You could gather information on that the same way that the exec command does when it calls its finish here. But that is an example of that. And that's also an example of a dependency pulling something out. Here, the dependency that we're depending on is the exec command that we know is in a certain exact file in a certain exact package. Generally speaking, this isn't a particularly great idea because you're relying on the internal layout of a package. Here, the default package and the other packages that ship with Sublime, they're pretty well laid out. And of course, you can also, if this didn't work because the underlying package default didn't have a file in it named exec, or that file did not have a class named exec command, this import line would throw an error, and you could catch the error. So you can also use that to detect whether or not a package exists. If you were doing something like this, you could try that and accept well nuts. And if I change this to that, now the console says well nuts down there when I save, instead of capturing an error. Of course, in your case, instead of saying well nuts, you would handle it as appropriate and perhaps warn the user that a package that they is definitely required doesn't exist, something along those lines. Was this helpful at all? I certainly hope so. If you got to the end of the video, thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, please thumbs up the video. You may also want to subscribe and perhaps bell notification icon to be notified when new videos become available. And if you look in the description below, I have a link to my other personal channel where once a week currently, uh, I am doing live streams, extended live streams of well, the plan was 2 hours, but the last one ended up being 3 hours of just me working on packages. If you find package development interesting and you'd like to see some insight, you can hop on in and watch the live streams when they happen or view the archives once they are completed. And as we saw here, if you have any questions about this video or other things you would like me to try and describe in Sublime Text, do leave a comment down in the comment section below or hit me on Twitter at ODATNerd. And thanks for watching. Have a sublime day.